Hey guys, welcome along to part 2 of my Swift 3.0 introductory video tutorial. I'm so sorry it's been so long since the last video. I've been so busy, but hopefully I can get onto a bit more of a regular routine with these videos from now on. If you haven't checked out the last video, I really suggest you do. Everything we do in this video and also subsequent videos builds on the video before it, so if you haven't checked it out, I will put a link to it in the description below. Basically in part 1 we went over basic operators, types and third types. We did a bit of a variable manipulation. We looked at the difference between variable and constant variables, as well as heaps of other stuff as well. Today we're going to build on that, and let's just get straight into it. So the first topic I want to talk about is the for loop. Now looping in any programming language, in my opinion, is probably one of the most common control flows that you'll have to do. Basically in a loop you can think of it as having a bunch of data, let's say a whole bunch of numbers or a whole bunch of place names, and for every place name that you have you want to do something. So in the case of maybe in an iPhone app, you might have a table view that you can scroll through a list of different places, and one way that you could achieve that is with a loop, by looping through all of them. So let's just dive into an example. So the basic syntax of a for loop in Swift, and to be honest in most programming languages it is the same, is you start with for, and then you have to assign a name. Now the name that you put in here, I'm going to put an index for now. This is what each individual item that you iterate through will be, and I'll show you that in an example here. So for index in 1 to 5, and then put in your curly braces, and then in there we want to do something. So I'm going to print, and remember from our last video, string interpolation, so I can go like that and type in index times 2 is index multiplied by 2. And you'll see down here in our console we have 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6, 4 times 2 is 8, and 5 times 2 is 10. So let's have a look at what's happening here. Basically what I'm asking it to do is loop through the numbers 1 to 5. Now every time it does that it creates a variable, and that variable is called index. So the first time this loops through, index is equal to 1. The second time it loops through, index is equal to 2, and so on until it hits 5. So then, because this function keeps looping round, and it does so, we can print out this 5 times, as it's done here. So to get it to print out the different things, I just go print, and then I use string interpolation to pop index into there. So index will be 1, 2, 3, 4, then 5, and then times 2 is index, and then multiplied by 2 gives us the answer. So that's quite a simple example of just going through numbers. So let's now create another data type which we haven't looked at before. And that's called an array. So we can create an array by going let my animals equal, and then we use square brackets, and in them we can put in Fluffy, Stevie, that's no word but oh well, rabbit, doggy. Okay, so what you can see over here is that we've created, this is called an array of strings, because we've populated the array full of different string items. We can create another array, array of random numbers, and these numbers don't need quotation marks. Oops, got to put an equal sign in there. There we go. So both of these are valid array types. Now arrays are super common as well. They're a way of storing information. So you might have a list of users, or you might have a collection of email addresses, and one way that you could store them is in an array. So they're separated by a comma, and you have multiple values within the one object. So we can also use a loop to go through this array. So we can say for animal in my animals. So what this is going to do is it's going to loop through this array of that I've called my animals, and it's going to create a variable each time called animal, and then I'm going to print and say this animal is called. And then you'll see down here, this animal is called Fluffy, this animal is called Stevie, this animal is called Rabbit, this animal is called Doggy. Basically what it's done is it's looped through my animals and then printed out the answer below. Okay, so that I don't make these videos too long, I want to jump into a bit of a basic program, building a basic program. Basically, what I want to do here is try and put together some of the concepts that we've learned already so that we can move on to more advanced stuff in the next video. So this little project we're going to do, just basically delete everything out of your playground that you have in there. And what we want to do is we're going to create a password checker. So basically we want to see if a user's password is correct. If it is, tell them it is. If not, tell them to try again. Now this isn't a real world example, but the basic principle of how passwords are checked is done in this way. So the first thing we want to do is create a variable. We're going to call it my password, and it's going to be a string, and I'm going to call it rabbit123. Okay, so that's my password. Then we're going to create, and I'm sorry, we need to, here we go. Best if I learn how to program myself. So then what we're going to do is we're going to create a array like we just did of passwords. So it could be okay, there we go. So the first variable I've created is my password, which is rabbit123 of type string. I've then created an array of strings, and each of these is an individual password. As you can see, rabbit123 is a password in there. So the next thing we want to do is we want to create a loop to go through each of these passwords. So, like we did before, for password in passwords. So passwords is this array, password is a variable it's going to assign each time it goes through, and make sure we put in our curly braces. So then what we want to do, so then password, each time this is looped through, password is equal to one of these passwords in this array. And what we want to do is we want to check and see if rabbit123 matches in there. So the first time this goes through, password is going to equal sillybill123. So we want to check to see if that is equal to rabbit123. If it is, then the user's password is correct. If it's not, then the password is false. So what we want to do is we want to say we want to use an if statement. Now remember if statements from our previous video. So what we want to do is we want to say is if my password, so my password is rabbit123, and we want to see if it is equal to password. So remember, the first time this goes through is going to see if my password, being rabbit123, is equal to sillybill123. The second time this loop goes through, it's going to see if rabbit123 is equal to hello world, and it'll keep on going. So if my password is equal to password, then we're going to print and say your password is correct. If my password is equal to the password through this loop, then print your password is correct. And you can see down here in the console that it has printed out your password is correct. Now if we were to modify this password, say put a 7 there, notice we don't get that your password is correct. So in a real world application, obviously instead of printing out something, you would then change the view, log in the user, show them some information, something like that. And obviously in later videos we will get into more real world examples like that. But what I tried to do with this example is show you a couple of concepts. One is creating different variable types. So we've got a string here, and then we've got an array of strings here, and then how you can loop through them, how you can use comparative operators, and then how you can print them out all in the if statements there. So that concludes part 2 of this series. Next video I'm going to go over conversion between data types, and then one of the most fundamental topics in learning Swift is the concept of optionals and optional types and how you deal with them, and having a core understanding of that is really vital to succeeding in Swift programming. Thank you so much for all your comments in the previous video. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you're still following along, and I will come back to you very, very soon with part 3.